Yo, what's up? I'm Coach RT3, and welcome to the Build You podcast. This is the very first episode of our podcast series, and I'm really excited to get started and get this information out to you in order to help you build your fitness business. Now, this podcast is going to cover a lot of different things, from the actual fitness and training itself to understanding all the business concepts that I've used throughout my years and all the things that I continue to learn and grow so that I can help support you and help you on your journey. I wish I had had something like this when I first started my business. I did a lot of trial and error. And when I first started in 2000, I had no idea what I was doing. I had gotten out of college and I was just looking for a job. And fortunately for me, my first grade teacher was still in contact, and she was like, hey, you graduated from college. My husband works at the Olympic Club. You should apply for a job there. So I started my career path there. I still had no idea what I was doing. I decided, hey, you know what? I should get a certified personal training certification. And an SCA seems like a good idea. At the same time, I was volunteering at San Francisco City College under the athletic trainer at that time, just learning a little bit about athletic training. I was uncertain about my career path, and I think it's important that I put this out there. You don't have to do just one thing. You can try and sample and dabble in a lot of different things. That's one of the things that I think has helped me build a more robust understanding of what it is I love and what I'm passionate about. The third thing I was doing at that time is I was working in a physical therapy clinic. And that experience working in a physical therapy clinic unfortunately guided me away from physical therapy, because at the time, and I'm sure there's still facilities out there like this, they were running a mill, which meant in order to get your insurance coverages and get the income that you need in order to survive as an independent physical therapy clinic, you need to run a lot of patients through per hour. And so what I noticed through that is that the physical therapists themselves seemed to be burnt out. I was a physical therapy aide, and I was handling 3, 4, sometimes 5 patients at a time. It was just too much. And I decided, hey, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to be sitting around filling out all this paperwork and doing all these things. I want to help people. And so I decided to go back to graduate school. And when I went back to graduate school, I went for sports management at the University of San Francisco. And in that program, I learned a little bit about myself. I learned a little bit about business. I got an opportunity to intern with the San Jose SaberCats, which was a arena football league team at the time. I ended up working part-time with the Golden State Warriors on their street team, out basically trying to rustle up business, because as you know, in those days, the Golden State Warriors were not the team that they currently are. I had the opportunity to do a lot of different things, volunteered with the San Jose Earthquakes, a variety of different things that I was able to kind of touch upon. But in the end, I decided that I wanted to do personal training. And a guy who was in a cohort in my graduate school program introduced me to a facility here in the Bay Area, and I began my journey as a official personal trainer. At that point in time, it was about 2004. I had gotten my certifications, my CSCS, my CPT. I was still working at the Olympic Club. I was still working in the physical therapy clinic, and I was taking a client here and there, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And it wasn't until I moved into this job where I was working at a facility, and this was my first time working at a personal training only facility, that I got the experience of what it's like to actually be a personal trainer and kind of start to dabble in running my own business. And so that's kind of where it all started. I never worked in a big box gym, although I have some insights on what I think big box gyms are about and how they operate, because I know a lot of people who have worked in big box gyms, and I still have membership at a big box gym. So I see how it operates, but I've never worked in that type of space. So if you're the type of person that's really interested in growing your business outside of a big box gym, this is going to be the space for you. So that's a little background on me and what my history is. I hope you enjoy this series of podcasts. This first series will be about 4 topics that my audience has kind of brought to me. In this very first episode, what we're going to cover is mobility. Now, I put out a poll in my Instagram to ask people what they wish they had known in their early days of coaching and training. And the respondents were interesting. And so I took all of those responses and I put them into categories, and I kind of put them all together in order to give you a more concise understanding of what other people were thinking. And so we had 4 main categories. The very first category, which we're going to discuss today, is a really important one, which falls right in my wheelhouse, and that is the importance of mobility training. It was really interesting to see that a wide amount of people said that they wish they knew more about mobility training, they wish they knew more about the importance of recovery and those sorts of things early on in their career. And I'm also one of those people who thinks the same thing. I've been in this training business for many, many years. When I first started training in 2004, I can really say that that's the very first time I really started training. Up until then, I was kind of dabbling, training a person here and there. But when I really dove in to working at a personal training only facility, that's when I really started to put in a lot of hours as a trainer. And at that point in time, I had no idea about mobility training, what it even meant. There were different programs out there, golf training programs. There were a variety of different things out there where people were calling it functional training. And you'd move dynamically and you'd do all these different things. And that was supposed to suffice for mobility training. Unfortunately, it was good for the moment, but it didn't really give people what they needed. And so over the years, I pretty much didn't do a whole lot of mobility training with my clients. And that's very interesting because the people who needed it most were the people I was working with. Me being in my 20s, I could do all types of things. My recovery was immaculate. I can bounce back from a 25 to 30 mile cycling trip and the next day be out running. No problem. But I was working with people who were in their mid-40s and some in their early 50s and some in their 60s at the time. And at the time, you don't know what you don't know. And the thing is, you don't know what a 60-year-old body feels like or a 50-year-old body feels like or a 40-year-old body feels like until you've reached 40, 50, and 60 years old. And so when you think about mobility training and knowing more about mobility training, I wish I actually had more empathy, or I wish I had more ability to reach out and understand what those clients were actually feeling inside. You'll never know what it feels like inside of another person's body, but that's where it's important to ask questions, because the more questions you ask about what they're feeling and what they're doing, and when they're doing certain activities, how they feel, the more information you can get from the person. One of the issues with early mobility training was that it was just kind of flopping around on the floor doing random stuff, and it wasn't very specific to the outcomes that we wanted. And what we didn't realize, or what I didn't realize, is that activities have prerequisites. Just like a math course, you have to do the primary math courses before you move on to algebra, geometry, and trig, and all those different things. So when we think about putting our clients into complex movement strategies like squats and lunges and different things, we don't realize that if a person's never done any of those things, there are prerequisites to being able or being capable of doing those things. And if they don't have those minimum prerequisites to be able to do those things, then we need to help them achieve and acquire those things so that they can be better at the thing that they want to do. So one of the things that I've learned over the years is that mobility, or specific joint mobility, is super important, because giving people more space in their hip, giving people more ability to bend and flex the knee, or get more ankle dorsiflexion, or get more overhead range of shoulder motion, is going to benefit them in the activities that they love doing. And so it's super important. The other thing is knowing how to integrate mobility training. I think oftentimes what people do is they say, okay, the mobility training is just kind of the side thing. It's not, super important. We'll just do a little bit of something at the beginning, or we'll do a little bit of stretching at the end. But in reality, your mobility training is strength training. And when you think about it, mobility being control of your ranges of motion, we're trying to help people control and strengthen various ranges of motion and be strong throughout those ranges. And so, in essence, your mobility training should be the through line for all of the training and through all of your sessions. There are so many myths about what the body's not supposed to do that we find ourselves limiting and constraining people that we work with. And so we're kind of compartmentalizing them and putting them inside of a box, as opposed to having an expansive view of what the human body is capable of and what your client can actually achieve. So it's important that we start to look at these myths out there, like the knees can't go over the toes, or the spine shouldn't bend when you bend over, and things like that. And we should start to, kind of deconstruct those ideas and say, hey, wait a minute. I want you to be able, if you had to bend your spine when you bend over. I mean, you shouldn't be in fear of bending over to pick something up and have to bend over with a straight, flat back in neutral spine in order to just pick something up off the floor. You should be able to bend and twist and do all of those things with confidence. And that's why it's important to integrate mobility training, because we're teaching people how to utilize their body. We're teaching people how to be strong at those endpoints and in those ranges where they might not feel so comfortable and confident. Finally, and I can't stress this enough, the importance of recovery. I often say the older you get and the more you do, the more recovery work you need to do, the more recovery strategies you have to put in place. And I couple this with mobility training because the two of those things kind of work hand in hand. And the better you're able to move, the better you're able to utilize your body, the more space you have, the more range you have, the more opportunities you have to train different things. Recovery is an essential part of our overall training. And when I was younger, I would run clients through a variety of exercises, and everybody has done this before, where they've run a client to the point where they've thrown up or they're feeling queasy, and that's because you haven't given them an opportunity to recover. And there's no reason to be pushing people to those spaces unless they're actually training for some sort of athletic endeavor. Obviously, you have to, at some point, push those boundaries and push those edges in order to grow. And you have to teach people where their limits are and how they can kind of push up near those without going over into it. But oftentimes, people come to you and they say, it's not a good workout unless I'm drenched with sweat and I feel like I'm broken or I can't move. And that's not what we want. The longer you spend unable to move the next day and the following day because you're so completely sore, that means the longer time before you actually do activity of those levels again. We want to be able to manage and train in such a way that people have the opportunity to continue to move tomorrow and continue to move in a way that's broad and gives them the ability to continue on their objectives, whether their objectives be training for an activity or event, or their objective is to lose weight or whatever the case is that they might want to do. If that's the case, how are they going to burn calories tomorrow when they're so sore they don't want to move? These are things to think about as we build our training and our programs with our clients. And that is definitely one of the things that I wish I knew when I was early on in my training career, because I worked with some people who not only pushed themselves, but wanted me to push them even harder. And it's a fine line. But as a coach, your job is to help people that are doing too much do a little bit less, and help people that are doing too little do a little bit more. And find that happy medium where they can move better, feel better, and do more. Thanks for listening or watching this episode of the Build You podcast. This is the very first episode of a series of 4 where we just started. In our next episode, we're going to talk about the myth of getting rich as a trainer and how you need to curb your enthusiasm. If you're not already following me on Instagram, go ahead and follow me at Coach_RT3. You can find all the other ways to connect with me in the show notes.